A lot of the mystery about the deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife has been solved.
Investigators have revealed the causes of death for Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa.
Gene Hackman, the legendary Hollywood actor known for his commanding presence and masterful performances, had long retreated from the limelight to live a quiet life with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. Their home, a secluded estate tucked away from the prying eyes of the public, seemed to be a sanctuary where they could enjoy their golden years in peace. But when the couple was found mysteriously dead under circumstances that baffled authorities, the true enigma lay not in their passing, but in what was discovered beneath their home. The basement, an unassuming part of the estate, held secrets so shocking that even the most seasoned investigators were left speechless. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The house itself had always been a topic of speculation. Built decades ago, it was a sprawling property with an air of mystery, partially due to Hackman's intensely private nature. The actor, despite his fame, had spent the latter half of his life away from Hollywood's glare, and even his closest friends admitted that they knew little about his personal affairs. Betsy Arakawa, his wife of over 30 years, was equally reclusive, adding to the aura of secrecy surrounding their lives. When both were found lifeless inside the mansion, it was initially presumed to be a tragic accident, or perhaps a natural cause of death. However, as authorities conducted a routine inspection of the property, they stumbled upon something that turned a simple case into an unprecedented mystery. The basement had been largely ignored during the preliminary search of the house. To outsiders, it seemed like a standard underground level, possibly used for storage or utilities. However, something felt off. The air was heavy, carrying an odd, almost metallic scent. Investigators noticed that part of the floor seemed disturbed, as if someone had recently moved items around or concealed something beneath the surface. It wasn't long before they uncovered a hidden trapdoor seamlessly integrated into the basement's concrete floor. What lay beneath was beyond comprehension. A narrow, dimly lit staircase led down to a concealed chamber, larger than anyone could have anticipated. The walls were lined with shelves containing meticulously organized objects, some covered in dust, others appearing as though they had been recently handled. At first glance, it seemed to be a collection of antique items, but as the details came into focus, a chilling realization set in. These were not mere relics of the past. The artifacts, documents, and bizarre personal effects suggested something far more sinister. In the center of the chamber stood an old wooden table, its surface scarred and stained. Strewn across it were photographs, some faded with age, others eerily fresh. Many of them depicted individuals whose identities were not immediately known. Faces frozen in expressions of fear, confusion, or something even darker. The unsettling part was the consistency in the photographs. Each seemed to capture a moment of distress, as though the subjects had been unaware that they were being photographed until the very last second. Further investigation led to the discovery of numerous journals, each one filled with handwritten entries spanning decades. The writing varied in tone, sometimes appearing methodical and detached, other times erratic and frenzied. The contents of these journals painted a picture of something far more elaborate than anyone could have expected. They spoke of encounters, observations, and a level of obsession that bordered on the deranged. There were detailed notes about individuals who had seemingly never been connected to Hackman's life, people who had vanished without explanation, their names now preserved only within the pages of these unsettling records. The deeper they delved into the room, the more questions arose. Tucked away in a locked cabinet was a collection of film reels, their contents still unknown at the time of discovery. Alongside them were old cassette tapes, neatly labeled with dates spanning several decades. Some of the labels bore cryptic titles, phrases that meant nothing to the investigators at first, but would later prove to be significant in ways they couldn't yet fathom. Then there was the chair. Positioned in the farthest corner of the hidden chamber, it was unlike anything else in the room. Aged and heavily worn, its leather upholstery bore deep scratches, as though someone had clawed at it in desperation. Metal restraints were affixed to its arms, rusted but still intact. The presence of this single ominous object shifted the entire narrative. Whatever had happened in this underground chamber was not merely the product of an eccentric mind or an actor's secretive nature. It suggested something far more disturbing, something intentional. As the pieces of this mystery slowly came together, the implications grew more unnerving. Hackman, a man revered for his roles on the silver screen, had spent his final years in possession of secrets that defied rational explanation. The chamber, hidden beneath his home, was no ordinary storage space. It was a place of purpose, meticulously maintained and curated. But for what reason? Was it a personal archive, an obsession that had consumed him in his later years? Or was it something darker, something that spoke to a reality far removed from the image the world had of him? Authorities were left grappling with more questions than answers. The discovery of human remains, though still awaiting formal identification, only deepened the mystery. Buried within the walls, carefully concealed beneath layers of stone, they were more than just remnants of the past. They were evidence that pointed to a truth so unsettling that it threatened to redefine everything the world thought it knew about Gene Hackman. The implications were staggering. How had this hidden chamber gone unnoticed for so long? How had someone of Hackman's stature managed to keep such a place a secret? And most importantly, what connection did it have to the deaths of both him and his wife? The presence of certain objects suggested that whatever had taken place in that basement had not been a solitary endeavor. There were indications of involvement, whether from willing participants or unwilling victims. It was still too soon to tell. The walls of the chamber held stories that no one had ever intended to be uncovered. The journals, the photographs, the inexplicable artifacts, they all pointed to a history that had remained buried for decades. As investigators attempted to piece together the puzzle, one chilling thought lingered. Was Hackman the orchestrator of these secrets, or had he merely been their keeper? And if he had been keeping them, then for whom? As the authorities carefully documented their findings, there was an unshakable sense that they had only scratched the surface. The true depths of what lay beneath Hackman's estate were still unknown, and with both him and his wife gone, there were no easy answers. The world had lost a cinematic icon, but in his passing, it had gained a mystery so profound that it left even the most hardened investigators struggling for words. The discovery had sent shockwaves through both the entertainment industry and beyond. It was no longer a simple case of an aging actor's passing. It was something far more significant, something that could not be dismissed as mere eccentricity. Whatever had taken place in that hidden basement was the result of years, perhaps even decades, of carefully maintained secrecy. And now that secrecy had been shattered. The question that loomed over everything was a terrifying one. If this was what had been found beneath the home of one of Hollywood's most respected figures, what other secrets lay buried in places no one had ever thought to look? The mystery surrounding Gene Hackman's hidden basement chamber was only beginning to unravel, and with each revelation it became clear that the truth was far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. What had initially been assumed to be a private collection of eccentric artifacts was rapidly turning into something of unspeakable darkness. Authorities worked tirelessly to make sense of what they had unearthed, but every answer seemed to give rise to even more troubling questions. As forensic teams combed through the basement's contents, they encountered additional materials that only deepened the enigma. Among the most perplexing discoveries was a series of maps, each meticulously marked with cryptic symbols, numbers, and what appeared to be coded annotations. Some of these maps were decades old, yellowed with time and delicate to the touch, while others were startlingly recent. They depicted locations stretching far beyond the boundaries of Hackman's property, hinting at a network of places connected by something no one could yet comprehend. Some locations had been marked with thick red ink, while others bore small crosses or circles. Investigators struggled to interpret their meaning, but the consistency of these markings suggested that Hackman, or someone else, had been tracking something, or someone, for years. Then there were the blueprints. Among the scattered documents, they found architectural drawings that seemed unrelated to Hackman's known properties. Some depicted underground structures remarkably similar to the hidden chamber itself, while others appeared to outline buildings and facilities that didn't exist on any known records. These blueprints weren't simple sketches. They were highly detailed, professional-grade schematics, some stamped with seals from organizations that should have had no connection to Hackman's personal affairs. What purpose did they serve? Had he been planning something larger? Or had he merely stumbled upon something far bigger than himself? As forensic specialists continued their work, The room yielded yet another shocking revelation. An assortment of objects that defied logic and explanation. There were strange mechanical devices, some appearing as intricate as precision instruments, and others crudely fashioned from mismatched parts. One particular device, roughly the size of a shoebox, emitted a faint hum when touched, though its power source remained a mystery. Another was a set of lenses, seemingly custom-made, that when looked through, distorted reality in a way that defied physics. Specialists could not determine their purpose, but there was something undeniably eerie about them. They were not the kind of objects one expected to find in the possession of a retired Hollywood actor. Then, there were the letters. Hidden in a locked compartment within one of the cabinets, these correspondences were unlike anything else found in the chamber. Some were written in Hackman's own hand, while others bore signatures of individuals whose identities remained unknown. The letters contained fragmented conversations about unfinished work, dire warnings, and cryptic references to the ones who watch. There was mention of dates and events that, upon closer examination, corresponded with real-world occurrences, many of which involved missing persons cases or unexplained disappearances. The implications were horrifying. Was Hackman merely documenting these events, or had he been involved in them? Perhaps the most haunting of all the discoveries was a single, unmarked black and white photograph found inside an envelope at the bottom of an old wooden crate. It depicted what appeared to be an empty hallway, its walls lined with doors. At first glance, there was nothing particularly unusual about it, but upon closer inspection, forensic analysts noticed a subtle, almost imperceptible figure standing at the farthest end of the corridor. The figure, barely visible in the dim lighting, appeared to be staring directly at the camera. Despite extensive analysis, no one could determine where or when the photo had been taken. The hallway in the picture did not match any known structure within Hackman's home, nor did it correspond with any documented location on his property. What unsettled investigators the most was not just the figure itself, but what they found when they enhanced the image. The facial features of the person in the distance were impossible to make out, blurred in a way that suggested movement, despite the still nature of the photograph. But the distortion was not typical of a camera flaw or motion blur. It was something else entirely, something that defied the normal behavior of light and shadow. The more they tried to enhance the details, the more the image seemed to resist clarity. What was this place? Who was the figure? And more terrifyingly, why had Hackman kept this photo hidden away? As the investigation pressed forward, rumors began to spread. The public, initially shocked by the deaths of Hackman and his wife, was now growing increasingly anxious over the strange circumstances surrounding their home. Speculations ran wild. Some believed Hackman had been involved in some kind of secret society, while others entertained the possibility of supernatural forces at play. The authorities, meanwhile, struggled to keep control of the narrative, knowing that the full scope of what they had discovered was too much for the public to process all at once. As forensic teams continued to catalog the items in the basement, they came upon something even more alarming: an underground tunnel hidden behind a section of the chamber's stone wall. The passageway, narrow and suffocating, extended deep beneath the estate, leading to a chamber even more unsettling than the first. Here, the walls were covered in markings that were neither purely decorative nor entirely linguistic. The symbols bore resemblance to no known language, yet they seemed intentional, their arrangement suggesting meaning. Some were etched directly into the stone, while others had been drawn in a dark substance that, upon testing, was revealed to be organic, blood, though too aged to determine its origin. At the center of this second chamber lay a pedestal, upon which sat an object that defied categorization. It was smooth, metallic, and cold to the touch, yet it seemed to pulse faintly, as if it were alive. When light hit its surface, it refracted in a way that suggested the object was absorbing the illumination rather than reflecting it. Those who entered the chamber described an overwhelming sense of dread, an unshakable feeling that they were not alone. Some reported hearing whispers, though the audio equipment failed to record anything out of the ordinary. Perhaps the most inexplicable finding came when forensic teams attempted to remove the object from its pedestal. The moment they made contact, all electronics in the chamber, including cameras, lights, and communication devices, suddenly failed. Every attempt to document the removal process resulted in corrupted footage and inexplicable malfunctions. Investigators, now unnerved beyond measure, decided to leave the object in place until they could determine a safe way to transport it. But the question remained, what was it, and why had Hackman hidden it beneath his home? At this point, a new, far more disturbing theory began to emerge. What if Hackman had not built the chamber himself? What if he had merely inherited it, stumbled upon it, or, worse yet, been drawn to it? The presence of objects that defied explanation, the maps marking locations beyond his property, the cryptic symbols, all of it suggested that whatever this was, it had existed long before Hackman and Betsy Arakawa had moved into the estate. What if the house itself had been chosen not for its beauty or seclusion, but for what lay beneath it? Had Hackman been a guardian of something he did not fully understand? Had he been attempting to decode the mystery himself, only to meet an untimely end before he could uncover the full truth? Or had he, in his final years, come to realize that he had been living atop something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined? With the world now fixated on the case, theories ran rampant, but one thing was clear. The deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife were not the end of the story. They were merely the beginning of something much larger, something that stretched beyond the boundaries of their secluded estate. The basement, with its hidden chamber and its inexplicable contents, had opened a door that could never be closed again. What had been found beneath Gene Hackman's home was no ordinary secret. It was something ancient, something unnatural. And whatever it was, it had been waiting, watching, long before he had ever set foot on that land. The depths of the mystery surrounding Gene Hackman's basement continued to unfold. And as more discoveries were made, the investigators found themselves drawn into an abyss of uncertainty. What had started as an unusual but explainable series of findings, old photographs, maps, mechanical devices, had transformed into something that defied rational understanding. The deeper they went, the more they began to question not only what had taken place in that hidden chamber, but whether they had stumbled upon something beyond human comprehension. Forensic teams, reinforced by specialists from various fields, began analyzing the markings on the walls of the second chamber. Linguists, archaeologists, and historians were brought in to decipher the strange symbols, but no known language matched what they found. Some experts theorized that the markings bore a resemblance to ancient scripts, perhaps proto-writing systems that predated civilization itself, while others suggested they were purely symbolic, representing something conceptual rather than linguistic. A darker theory emerged. What if the markings were neither written by Hackman nor anyone else in recent history? What if they were remnants of something far older? Something that had existed before the house was even built? The tunnel that led to the second chamber was examined further, and with every step into its depths, the feeling of unease grew. The air became thinner, the silence more oppressive. Investigators discovered that the passage did not end at the chamber. Instead, another narrow pathway extended even further, leading downwards at a slight angle. The realization was chilling. Whatever this place was, it wasn't confined to Hackman's property. It was bigger than anyone had anticipated. As teams advanced, they came across more evidence that this underground network had been used, perhaps not recently, but certainly within the past century. Scattered remnants of old tools, rusted implements, and even decayed pieces of wooden furniture were found embedded in the damp earth. Some of these objects bore markings similar to the ones on the chamber walls, suggesting continuity between them. Then came the most unsettling discovery yet, a section of the tunnel where the walls were not made of stone, but of something else. Something smooth and almost metallic to the touch. It was not like any known building material, nor did it show signs of corrosion or wear, despite what should have been decades, if not centuries, of exposure to moisture and decay. Attempts to take samples from this strange surface failed. No tools could penetrate it, and even sophisticated cutting equipment merely bounced off as though the material repelled all physical force. Investigators began to wonder if they had stumbled upon something not of this world, something that had been buried beneath the earth long before Hackman or anyone else had laid claim to the land. Then came the most terrifying moment of the investigation. Surveillance footage from the forensic team's equipment began to show disturbances. Static interference disrupted audio recordings, Cameras captured flickering images, and movement sensors activated with no apparent source of motion. Then, one night, a security officer stationed near the entrance to the second chamber reported hearing faint whispers emanating from the tunnel. At first, he dismissed it as fatigue playing tricks on him, but as the sounds grew clearer, he realized they were not random. They were voices, several of them muttering in an unidentifiable language. Panicked, he called for backup, but when the rest of the team arrived, the sounds had stopped. However, upon reviewing the security footage, they discovered something chilling. Just before the moment when the guard had reported hearing the whispers, the camera had captured a brief flash of movement at the far end of the tunnel. It was not human. It was not animal. It was something else. What had once been an investigation was rapidly turning into something beyond the control of any of the professionals involved. The discoveries had reached a point where no logical framework could explain what was happening. Rumors spread among the team. Some claimed that whatever was hidden in the basement had been deliberately concealed for reasons far greater than anyone had imagined. Others believed that Hackman himself had been aware of something and had spent his final years either trying to contain it or understand it. But the most unnerving realization of all was this: if Hackman and his wife had indeed died under mysterious circumstances, was it possible that they had been silenced? Had they gotten too close to uncovering a secret they were never meant to find? The letters found within the chamber seemed to suggest that Hackman had been in contact with individuals who shared his knowledge. Some of the names mentioned in the correspondence were recognizable: historical figures, missing persons, even prominent scientists who had vanished under strange circumstances. These were not mere coincidences. They pointed to a network, a hidden web of individuals who had, at some point, encountered whatever this was. Then something even more terrifying happened. The estate, which had been secured by law enforcement and kept under tight surveillance, suddenly experienced a blackout. Every security system failed simultaneously. Motion detectors registered movement inside the basement even though no personnel were inside at the time. By the time emergency power was restored, the second chamber, where the unknown object had been resting on its pedestal, was empty. The object was gone. Not a single piece of footage captured its removal. No signs of forced entry were found. No footprints. No disturbances. Only a void where the object had once been. Authorities scrambled to determine how it had disappeared, but there was no explanation. Some investigators left the case entirely, unwilling to involve themselves any further in something that seemed beyond human understanding. Others pressed on, desperate to piece together the final moments of Hackman's life and uncover what had really happened beneath his home. A crucial breakthrough came when investigators uncovered a hidden compartment within the walls of the main house. Inside, they found a series of recordings, videotapes, audio tapes, and encrypted digital files containing Hackman's own voice. His final messages were haunting. He spoke of dreams, of visions he could not escape. He described feeling watched not by people, but by something ancient and unseen. He mentioned the symbols, the object, the whispers in the dark. He confessed that he and Betsy had discovered the underground tunnels by accident, and that from the moment they did, their lives had been changed forever. His final words, spoken in a trembling voice, sent shivers down the spines of everyone who heard them. "It knows we've found it, and now it won't let us leave." The recording ended abruptly. The implications were horrifying. Was Hackman's death truly natural, or had something taken him and his wife? Had they been eliminated to prevent the truth from emerging? And most disturbingly, was whatever had been beneath the estate still there, watching, waiting? The media storm that erupted in the wake of these discoveries was unlike anything before. The official reports were vague, carefully worded to avoid mass panic. The true depth of what had been found was kept from the public, classified beyond even the highest levels of authority. But whispers spread, conspiracy theories flourished, and those who had seen the evidence firsthand carried with them a knowledge that would never allow them to sleep soundly again. The estate was sealed off indefinitely. The tunnels were filled with reinforced concrete, and access was permanently restricted. But there were those who believed it was a futile effort. Some things, once uncovered, could never be buried again. And as for the object that had vanished, no one knew where it had gone, or who had taken it. But somewhere in some unseen corner of the world it still existed, and it was waiting. Despite the official efforts to seal off the estate and silence any further investigation, those who had been involved in the discovery of Gene Hackman's hidden chamber knew that the mystery was far from over. The disappearance of the object from the underground chamber was not just an anomaly, it was an indication that someone or something had intervened. But what force had the capability to remove an object that had seemed impervious to human interference without leaving a trace? In the weeks following the incident, several members of the investigative team reported experiencing strange occurrences. Some suffered from vivid recurring nightmares, dreams that mirrored the very symbols they had seen on the walls of the hidden tunnels. Others reported seeing fleeting figures in the corners of their vision, silhouettes that would vanish the moment they turned their heads. A few even claimed to hear voices, whispers just beyond the range of normal hearing, speaking in that same unidentifiable language captured on the security footage. One of the most disturbing reports came from a forensic analyst who had examined the black and white photograph of the mysterious hallway. Unable to shake a feeling of unease, she had taken a high-resolution scan of the image, enhancing it in an attempt to extract more detail from the blurred figure at the end of the corridor. What she found was deeply unsettling. The enhancement revealed not one figure, but multiple. What had initially appeared to be distortions in the image were, in fact, additional forms, half seen, standing in the darkened recesses of the hallway. They had been there all along, just beyond the threshold of human perception. As more analysts reviewed the photograph, an even more terrifying realization emerged. The hallway depicted in the image did not exist anywhere in Hackman's estate. No part of his home or the underground tunnels matched the architecture seen in the picture. This meant one of two things. Either the photo had been taken somewhere else entirely, or the place it depicted no longer existed, or perhaps had never existed in the conventional sense. Despite the growing fear among those involved in the case, the official narrative remained tightly controlled. The estate was declared off-limits, labeled a hazardous site due to structural instability, and any discussion of the true findings was quietly suppressed. Those who had been closest to the investigation found themselves reassigned, dismissed, or in some cases, simply vanished from public view. But the greatest lingering question remained unanswered. Why had Hackman stayed? If he had truly understood what he had uncovered beneath his home, why had he not left? Had he believed he could control it, or had he in some way become a part of it? As time passed, and the world's attention drifted away, those who had been closest to the investigation found it impossible to forget. There was an unshakable certainty among them that whatever had been beneath Hackman's estate was not confined to that place alone. It was something larger, something that had merely been glimpsed, but never fully understood. Strangely, attempts to trace the origins of the land led to dead ends. Old records were incomplete. Official documents seemed altered or missing, and any historical accounts of previous ownership were vague at best. It was as if the estate had always been there, existing outside of time's usual grasp. Then, one final mystery surfaced. A coded message sent anonymously to one of the former investigators contained only a set of coordinates far from Hackman's property, deep in an uninhabited region. When cross-referenced with the maps found in the basement, the coordinates matched a location that had been marked in thick red ink. The implications were terrifying. Had Hackman's home been just one part of a much greater unseen network? And if so, how many more places like it were hidden across the world waiting for someone to uncover them? The coordinates led to a place far removed from civilization, an expanse of land untouched by modern development, shrouded in dense forests and rocky terrain. Those who attempted to visit the location found nothing at first. No buildings, no ruins, no signs of human activity. But the deeper they ventured, the more they felt a presence, an unsettling sensation as if something unseen was observing their every move. Satellite imaging of the area revealed a peculiar anomaly. While the landscape appeared natural to the naked eye, thermal scans suggested underground structures, similar in layout to the tunnels beneath Hackman's estate. Whatever was hidden there had been buried deep, deliberately concealed from the world. Those who investigated further reported experiencing an inexplicable pull, an urge to go beyond, to uncover what lay beneath the earth. But without the means to excavate such a remote location, their efforts stalled. The site remained undisturbed, its secrets locked away, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to uncover them. Hackman had found one entrance to whatever this was, but now it was clear. His was not the only one, and somewhere the truth behind it all remained just beyond reach, watching, waiting to be found again. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on what they found in Gene Hackman's basement? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.